Welcome to the second video of our OneXPlayer X1 mini series. Since the majority of people that ask for recommendations from us don't necessarily like to tinker, this is our out-of-the-box episode, geared for those that just want it to work. Now that we've had the X1 mini for a couple weeks, we're ready to share some benchmarks and some demo video. We also compared this to a ROG Strix G14 from about 2022 that has an AMD 5900HX as well as an NVIDIA GeForce 3070. We also have a Razer X Chroma eGPU using Thunderbolt that we wanted to compare numbers with. Our first benchmark is NovaBench. As you can see, the X1 Mini does really well against the G14, scoring 2585 against 2490. The CPU is very close, 1422 versus 1425. The GPU is where the G14 makes up most of its numbers, 395 against the X1 Mini is 239. And the memory and storage of the X1 Mini are quite a bit better than the G14. Our next benchmark is Cinebench Multicore. The X1 Mini gets 9868 versus the G14 11887. And since Cinebench is really CPU bound, the 7800 XT and the eGPU doesn't really add much. Next we have Cinebench Single Core, where the X1 Mini beats the G14, 1618 to 1401, and the 7800 XT doesn't really add too much again. Our next benchmark is 3D Mark TimeSpy. The X1 Mini gets 2757, getting destroyed by the G14 with 8569. However, since the GPU plays a bigger role in this benchmark, plugging it into the external GPU lets the X1 Mini come back and beat the G14 with 14802. Our last benchmark here is the 3D Mark Steel Nomad Lite. And similar to the previous TimeSpy, the G14 again destroys the X1 Mini with an 8094 versus a 2332. And just like the previous benchmark, plugging it into the external GPU allows the X1 Mini to come back and beat the G14 with a 17307. Our first gameplay comes from Jedi Knight Fallen Order. With low settings, we seem to hover between 40 and 60 frames per second. Our next gameplay is Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. And for some reason, the FPS counter doesn't show on this one, but it doesn't feel like it's ever below 60 while playing. Next we have some PlayStation 2 emulation running through the Windows version of EmuDeck. And again, all default settings. We seem to hover around 50 to 60 frames per second. And the last gameplay demo is Golden Axe Beast Rider from the Xbox 360. Other than some texturing issues, it runs really well, staying around 60 frames per second. As for our final thoughts, all in all, we really enjoy the X1 Mini. The almost 9-inch screen is really nice for people who, like me, have eyes that are getting older and don't always like to look at the small screens anymore. And you may have noticed through the gameplay videos that even though we have it set at 15 watt TDP, oftentimes it drops down quite a bit. Even regular Nintendo era games, I see it go down to 2 or 3 watts. Just remember that even though you have it set at 15 watts TDP, the system itself does use a little more. The screen, the sound, the other parts of the motherboard, memory, hard drive, that kind of stuff. Default out of the box, that seems to take up another 12 watts or so. So realistically, at 15 watts, you really see about 27 watts of actual use, depending on the games you're playing. And as a worst case scenario, 27 watts total constantly, you should see about 2 hours and 24 minutes of battery life. But I've seen on lower end emulation, when it's running at 2 to 3 or 4 watts, it's saying that there's going to be 6 hours of battery life, which is pretty phenomenal for that kind of thing. So yeah, we really do like the X1 Mini. I would guess that it's as good or better in many ways than even the new ROG Ally X, especially if you like larger screens. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe and let us know.